This is the New Jersey Constitutional Republican Radio Hour, heard on the fourth Saturday of each month here on Cruisin' 92 WVLT FM in Vineland, New Jersey. We have a special guest today. Mr. Steven Solof is joining me, and he sent me a letter and an email recently, and this is how I became acquainted with him. And he is here with me, and I want him to introduce himself at this time and discuss the work that he's doing, which I think is very important. Steven, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carman, for having me. So, my name is Steve Solof, and my project right now is InformTheVoteNJ.com. Inform as in like information, the vote, NJ as in New Jersey.com. And a good way to introduce what this project's about is to describe the origin story. Basically, 2 years ago, I got my sample ballot for the elections in the mail. And so I opened it up, and, like a lot of people, you don't always know all the people who are on the ballots. And so I said, you know what? I've been getting more interested in politics in general. And a couple of my friends a long time ago said, well, if you really want to know what's going on and make a change or do something significant, get a little bit more involved in local politics. Mm-hmm. And so I said, all right, cool. I'm going to Google all these people that are on the ballot, look over my choices, and cast an informed vote. But if you haven't done as much research as I have in the past couple of years, that is a lot easier said than done. Mm-hmm. You would think in the year 2025 there would be a robust press coverage, mm-hmm. and candidates would have their websites with all their platforms and issue stances clearly illustrated. Mm-hmm. And then any curious voter could spend 10 minutes searching for the different websites, spend maybe an afternoon or two over the weekend before they either send their ballot in by mail or show up to the voting booth, and just make an adult level decision. Mm-hmm. I don't care I do care if you lean left or right, but in general, you give everybody the respect to look over the information, make their choice, and move on with your life.
Right, so very much educationally motivated.
Yeah.
You want to help inform voters. I created the Constitutional Republicans back in 2017 to essentially do the same in regards to learning about what constitutes a democratic, constitutional, federal republic, which is the complete and proper name
yes.
in describing our government, as well as to maintain the connection which I saw was being lost to the Republican Party, mm-hmm. which was the party of Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. which was the party of natural rights and natural law, mm-hmm. which was the party of equal justice for all, sure. not just those who vote Republican or those on the other side. So very much educationally based. So that's what you've done with your organization here.
Yeah, and I got, lit up by when you said the full name of the system of government. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not going to put anybody on blast, but I've talked to a couple of people who are much older than I am and are very intelligent and politically, not necessarily involved, but they do their homework, they watch the news, they read the articles, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to explain, it's not a pure democracy. What do you mean it's not a pure democracy? It's kind of like a democratically elected constitutional republic. And I'm explaining to this person, there's a difference. It's not just majority rules all the time.
Exactly. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I was thinking that the stress on using the word democracy, which has essentially been taken by one party in particular over the other. However, it's motivated by what has infiltrated both parties and really the political landscape, and that is populism.
Yeah.
And populism is based on the rule of the majority, or the what is popular in the respect that it's government predicated on emotion, and government on reaction. It's a reactionary. It's a reactionary movement. So democracy has to do with you'll see many people on the supposed right have tattoos and flags that say "We the people," and that is a form. What they're really identifying is the populism that has taken over the so-called Tea Party or the conservative or the Republican. That's taken over. The populism has taken over these ideas. But what's interesting is it was we the people in 1789 that said, we the people do ordain and establish this Constitution as our authority.
Right.
Not the rule of the majority.
Right.
Not the results of an election, whether up or down, or yay or nay, or the majority rules. So what it is so there's the democratic aspect of it, right, with the people, and then the constitutional aspect is because we the people ordain and establish this Constitution.
Right.
The federal respect is that there are two different governments. We have a state government,
right,
and we have a national government,
right,
and they are meant to offset and to check each other and balance. And then we have a republic because we are electing representatives,
right,
and that's what you're very interested in, and what you're trying to educate voters on: the right representative to be elected.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting that you brought up the populism, the reactionary, and all that kind of stuff, because it was this very similar conversation with the same person that I was referring to earlier, and I brought up the concept of the tyranny of the majority. And it was like their brain kind of exploded. Like, what do you even mean? Yeah. Isn't it popular vote wins and blah, blah, blah? And
right. Populism is the idea of populism, Stephen, is completely taken over the political landscape.
Right.
So what it is whoever wins, it's their way. It's their way or the highway. They say the people have spoken. It's either one party's agenda, regardless of the other parties defending their ability to participate, their rights, if you will, their natural rights. So what I wanted to do with you, Steve, is to read this article that I found from a gentleman who has a blog called Critical. He's the author of a book called Critical Skills: 8 Essential Critical Skills. And his name is Charles Jett. And I'm going to read some portions, and then I'm going to get some of your thoughts on what I'm going to read. And everything in this article pertains to exactly the introduction that we've given for this particular program. Now, the character of public officials is more than just a matter of personal virtue. It is a critical element that shapes the health and stability of a democratic government. So even the author he's not using democratic, constitutional, federal republic, because it's easier just to say democratic, but it's not accurate that way.
It's very easy to overwhelm a listener.
Yes.
Because you have to unpack almost every statement.
And what's interesting is, Steve, that all four of those aspects are there to check one another, which is exactly what the government that these our brilliant founders devised for us to have. So the founding fathers who the founding fathers who designed the framework of the United States Constitution believed that the success of the republic depended not only on the structure of government, but also on the integrity, honesty, and virtue of the individuals who would held public office. The founders wrote extensively about the role of character in public life, emphasizing that elected officials must prioritize the common good over personal gain. So let's explore the meaning of character in public office, drawing on writings from the Federalist Papers, letters between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, and insights from later leaders. So what's interesting is, Stephen, the idea that the structure of government would be predicated on the Constitution itself, the separation of powers, the three different branches. They in themselves, Alexander Hamilton thought, were enough, where a Bill of Rights wouldn't even be needed.
Right.
But yet, and James Madison believed that initially, but he changed his mind, saying, well, this will help the minority if they do have if they are told that they have to worship in a certain way, or if they don't, if they're not able to own a firearm, or if they're not able to be given a fair trial, et cetera, going through the actual amendments in the Bill of Rights, the constitutional amendments that would be added.
So you're getting at like a lot of what was in the Constitution would have implied some of the things in the Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights explicitly states some of these things just in case somebody tries to take advantage of the implications.
Exactly right, and that's what Madison thought would be important, that the minority needed those Bill of, if there was a tyranny of the majority, which is what was a great concern to them. Today, the people want a tyranny of the majority. The Republican Party in charge now, they want to dominate, just like they thought, and just like justifiably so the Democrats did when they were in power, not looking out for the common good that we see here. But the important part here in this first section is that a leader, a representative. The founders would be appalled by the idea of a leader being called a leader. They would say a representative.
Right.
So integrity, honesty, and virtue are the attributes. How are we able to know those things with candidates at the local, state, and national level?
I mean, you're kind of teeing up my own argument, right? Is if there's one thing I've learned over the past 20 years of being a young adult and now transitioning into middle age, is vetting people is a huge thing. Whether you're talking about a new friend who's coming into your life, a new girlfriend, boyfriend who's coming into your life, a representative, somebody you're hiring for a job in regular employment, if you don't spend at least, I don't know, a half an hour speaking with somebody, you would have no idea whether that person just gives you the heebie-jeebies or if they have any sort of strong moral character behind them. Because this issue of trusting people is coming up over and over again. There was a issue over at Millville City Hall this past week with the candidates not knowing exactly how many signatures they needed to have on the ballot or on the petition to get on the ballot. And I don't want to get overly nitpicky or put anybody on blast, but there was a suggestion that the candidates should have done their homework and done the math about exactly how many signatures they needed because it's defined by statute and all this stuff. But sometimes you just want to be able to go and ask a clerk a question and trust that they're going to give you good information.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not to say that people can't make mistakes or whatever, but knowing that the system is being checked and upheld by strong people, it goes a long way, so that you don't have to go down a rabbit hole every time you have a simple question. Right,
and specifically when it came to the signing up to getting a petition signed to be placed on the ballot, the information on the ballot said 10 signatures, but it was actually 25, but they didn't change that. They didn't make new petitions stating that. That's a situation I ran into, getting my name on the petition for the Hopewell Township School Board. But moving forward, let's talk more about character. At its core, character refers to the moral and ethical qualities that define an individual's actions and decisions. In the context of public office, character encompasses qualities such as honesty, integrity, selflessness, and a commitment to the public good, not just for one party or the other, but the public good. The Founding Fathers believed that public officials must possess these traits to lead effectively and maintain the trust of the people. I would contest the usage of the word lead and put representative to represent effectively in there. Now, in Federalist number 68, Alexander Hamilton emphasized the importance of integrity and moral fortitude in public officials, especially in the office of the president. Quote, the process of election affords a moral certainty that the office of president will never fall to the lot of any man who is not an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. For Hamilton, qualifications were not limited to political knowledge or administrative skills. They also included the moral character needed to guide the nation through complex challenges. Hamilton and other founding fathers feared that without strong character, public officials would fall prey to corruption, self-ambition, and tyranny. So here we see not only the political knowledge. I would add to this statement that there needs to be a historical knowledge. There needs to be a constitutional knowledge, and there needs to be a constitutional literacy. That there needs to be an understanding of the purpose of government,
right?
Which I would contest many so-called candidates and present elected representatives have no grasp of, don't completely comprehend. What are your thoughts?
It's very obvious if you pay attention either to the current president or you speak to candidates around town. Some of them are just giving you sales pitches. And I think what happens when you have too much sales pitch, a little bit too much reactionary, playing off the emotions of the public, nobody knows what they're actually signing up for. And it's creating a lot of confusion as to, am I giving informed consent based off of good information? Are these people honest? That's one of the characteristics that was laid out.
Yes.
And all of this transparency stuff that I'm working towards is just asking basic questions like, okay, you said you were going to do this. When you get in office, did you actually do it? And is any sort of accountability going to happen for you just not doing what you said you were going to do? And I think that's adding a lot of confusion in the zeitgeist, which relates back to that Millville thing that I brought up. It's not necessarily that I want to harp on somebody for just making a clerical error. It's that we now live in this time where anything as simple as a clerical error might look like, was that done on purpose? To get a couple of candidates not on the ballot at the last minute before the deadline? Yeah. It's this lack of trust type thing.
And overall, Steve, talking about populism. Now, populism will compromise the prerequisite of morality and truth and honesty and virtue and a character to get what they want. The people, and we've seen this at the national stage, and we've seen it with the current administration, that there's a compromise. We will compromise. We will justify this man's lack of integrity, this man's dishonesty, this man's lawlessness, as long as, and we think that he cares about us and he cares about the nation,
right? And
he can hold the flag and kiss it. That is the priority over the necessity of integrity and honesty and selflessness. And the political parties are largely responsible, both of them, for allowing that to happen. Whereas throughout our history, Stephen, the political parties did vet and they did filter and they did scrutinize their candidate before they elected them to nomination to represent the party.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. It's very easy to point at the current guy in office, but if we basically allowed this culture to grow into what it is,
it could be worse.
And not only could it be worse, is what's going on right now the symptom as opposed to the underlying disease.
What's accepted as the new norm is not what the founders intended, with the idea of integrity, moral character, and selflessness. The idea of self-denial, of giving up yourself for the good of the public, in representative office. Thomas Jefferson wrote to John Adams and said, when a man assumes a public trust, he should consider himself as public property. Jefferson's view was clear. Holding public office meant setting aside personal interest in favor of the public welfare. The character of an official, then, was defined by their willingness to act selflessly and serve the nation's greater good. Now, an aspect of populism, Stephen, is demagoguery. So the demagogue says it's us versus them. And this has been seen to a certain degree earlier on in the 20th century, but it reached its climax in 2016. And now it is metastasized. This idea of us versus them. No more do we talk about the greater good of the nation. We only talk about the interest, the special interest of one or the other political party.
Yeah, a way that I like to think about it is when I was growing up, somewhere, somehow, I was led to believe, like, oh, well, you know, Democrats think slightly in one way and Republicans think slightly in another way, where, you know, maybe the conversations were more about, oh, do we have a 4% sales tax so that we can keep more money in people's pockets, or do we do a 6% sales tax because there are a couple more social programs that we could use? And it was like a difference of opinion, and it didn't really matter too much if we went one way or the other. It was just adults sitting at the kitchen table making a decision and a compromise. Now, yes, it is very much feeling more like tribal warfare, where, you know, if you dare vote for the other side, you're betraying. It's become tribal. The Founding Fathers' expectations for public officials. The Founding Fathers held high expectations for public officials, believing that individuals in power should be models of virtue and integrity. In their writings, they repeatedly stressed that the character of public officials was essential to the long-term success of the Republic. In Federalist number 57, James Madison wrote, quote, "The aim of every political constitution is or ought to be first to obtain for rulers men who possess most wisdom to discern and most virtue to pursue the common good of the society." So not only is the character and the moral character important, but so are the ideas of virtue and wisdom. The ability to, so wisdom requires knowledge. Yeah.
And when you're electing officials, whether local, state, or national, and they do not have the prerequisite knowledge of what entails government, what their responsibility in government is, what is law? How do we enforce law? How do we adjudicate law? If they don't even know that,
right,
then how are they going to be able to represent the people?
Well, this is making me think of one of my advocacy points, which is we as citizens are asked to cast votes. And if we as citizens don't understand what's going on to that depth, how are we going to pick the right leaders to serve at that level? And
I've said all along, Stephen, and we've said this since I began the organization, we have a civic education crisis in this nation. Really, since the 1950s, with the increase of science and math, it's called STEM now, there's nothing about American history and government in there. So without that grasp of American history and government, that void has been filled with propaganda and a lot of false information, specifically coming from other textbooks that have been used in schools that are not truthful. Now,
so before we move on from that,
go ahead.
I think because
I'm speaking specifically of Howard Zinn and the.
I read that book.
Right. So the people. So
I read that book before I read the Constitution.
So this comes right. So there you go. So you see what you're getting is you're getting a very jaded and you're getting a very one-sided look at history and you're providing that information. And unfortunately, that has filled the void that's been left by taking civics out of education. The People's History of the United States is what we're talking.
Yes.
The book that we're talking about.
So then I guess,
and he comes at it from a very Marxist perspective.
Right.
And that is not an honest perspective of American history at all.
See, now I wouldn't even know that is directly Marxist. It was just what my history teacher in 10th grade told me to read.
Well, it's very much is predicated upon discrimination, economic discrimination, economy. Of course, Marx was interested, was an economist in theory, and talking about a method of economy that would be predicated upon socialism and communism.
Sure.
But in moving forward and talking about civic education, so you're learning that if the voters don't understand what to look for, or don't understand the purpose of government, or don't understand their democratic constitutional federal republic, then how is the representative, and do the representatives know what
Right.
comprises a democratic constitutional federal republic?
Right.
Okay.
So then the to bring it back to our correspondence, you were saying maybe how can we work together to solve some of these issues? Well, my idea is directly advocate for reintroducing civics and local civics into school curriculum. I mean, it sounds like you would obviously be on board with that.
Yes, and I can say that at Hopewell Crest, they're already there. They're in every single grade.
Awesome.
Now, if you're on the Violent School Board, maybe you should look into what the curriculum is. I'm chairman of the curriculum committee at Hopewell Crest, so I'm very familiar with everything that's being taught, and we are an exception. We are not the rule. Most schools do not have what they call social studies, which is another topic of debate on.
And that's interesting because I interviewed another candidate, and if somebody wants to do their research and find it, because I'm not here to put people on blast, but someone told me that the lack of civic education talking point is a myth, which sounds to me like you have a different opinion. Certain schools do have a robust civics education. Other schools have something else.
Right. Well, it's very easy to just paint a broad brush across the board like we do with almost everything that we discuss. From race to education to economy to just about everything. It's much more convoluted. The truth is much more convoluted than because we're so used to sound bites and getting our information in little snippets for a couple of minutes, or a Facebook post, or an Instagram post, or something that is being said by Brett Baer or by Rachel Maddow. And this is what we hold on to, as opposed to doing the diligent hard work of comparing all the sources and then trying to find that nugget of truth somewhere in the convolution of all the information that you're being given.
Yeah, unfortunately, or a mix of pros and cons. We live in a culture of convenience.
Yes.
As in, somebody should have already.
Gratification.
Yeah, somebody should have already done the homework for us and presented it to us truthfully and comprehensively. But unfortunately, it seems as though there are plenty of gaps that need to be filled.
The character of public officials in the modern era. In contrast to the ideas of the Founding Fathers, modern-day career politicians often lack the same commitment to virtue and selflessness that the original framers of the Constitution envisioned. Many contemporary politicians focus on short-term political gains or personal ambitions rather than the long-term well-being of the nation. The Founding Fathers did not intend for public service to be a lifelong career driven by self-interest or the pursuit of power. In Federalist 72, Alexander Hamilton expressed concern about politicians who cling to office for personal gain. There's a danger that public men may be tempted to betray their trust by an object disposition to the views of ambitious men who have gained an influence over them. So we hear a lot about term limits, and we hear a lot about people wanting to and what I have said is that the people who are for term limits, they want to impose them upon those who are in the opposition party, who they don't like the fact that their constituents are continually re-electing over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Now, the founders do put term limits in the Constitution. It's 2 years for the House of Representatives. It's 4 years with no more than 2 consecutive terms for the president. And then, which of course was added after Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that constitutional amendment was added after the 21st Amendment, and then, the 23rd Amendment, and then the judiciary does not have a term limit. And that was very important because politics should not be motivating the decisions made predicated on interpreting and applying the Constitution correctly to any piece of legislation. But the idea is that in 6 years for the Senate. So the term limits are there.
Yeah.
But the people who want term limits don't like Nancy Pelosi being continually reelected.
Right.
And maybe the Democrats in Texas aren't going to be happy with Ted Cruz being constantly reelected. So, but normally the term limits fall on the so-called counterfeit right, is what I call them, or the counterfeit conservatives that have taken over the Republican Party, the populist. The populist aspect that's completely taken over the party looks for the idea of term limits. But because the people don't understand what the purpose of government is, don't require the virtue and the character and the moral, nor do they demand the wisdom and the intellectual rigor and the constitutional literacy of their candidates, so they think the answer is a term limit.
Right.
But the answer is to get familiar and to require from the candidates all of the attributes that the founders intended for the representatives to have.
I was speaking about that with Commissioner Albrecht, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and he was saying, like, you know, if you have a good guy who has good character and he already knows what's going on in the government and is doing a good job, then why would you hire somebody else? You know what I mean? And if you're only imposing the term limits when it's convenient because now you want your person in instead of the person who's already doing the job, then it's just, we're back to playing games instead of just focusing on what should be the righteous aspect of finding people of good character to do the job.
That's right. And then the founders would not want to restrict the ability of the people to limit that type of a representative. Now, it should be incumbent upon the representative to term limit themselves, if you will. But the founders thought that would be the prudent means by which to go about that, as opposed to enforcing the idea that you can only serve so many terms and then you're out. But it's because the people have already, all it is, in my estimation, is a Band-Aid, because all it's doing is you don't demand virtue from your candidate. Right. You don't demand integrity. You don't demand character. You don't demand knowledge. You don't demand wisdom. You don't demand benevolence from your candidate.
You're just trying to find an opening.
You're finding somebody who will do something for you.
Right. Because
of your selfishness.
Right.
But yet the founders said that the candidate needed to be selfless. So it's very much a moral.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very much a moral character.
And I'm glad we're talking about it in those terms because, yeah, I was raised without religion, right? But my parents are good people, so, you know, I got good values and stuff. But there is something to be said about not paying attention to moral and ethical character enough. As in, you can easily get sold to somebody who presents themselves well, but then when push comes to shove, they don't have the moral fortitude to do the right thing at the right time. It's just self-serving or something more convenient other than doing the hard work of, like, well, this is what I led you to believe, so maybe I should follow through on that.
What's funny, or what also needs to be remembered, is the founders had this mentality that was very much self-denial, disinterest, a disinterestedness, a disinterest in faction, a disinterest in passion and emotion, more wisdom, prudence, reason, rational thinking. This is very much what Lincoln talked about in his great perpetuation of our political institutions address, because populism was occurring in 1838 in the country with the burning of and killing of abolitionists and the destruction of the printing presses that were putting information out there in opposition of slavery, and people were taking vigilantism was running amok with the supposed criminals, and they weren't giving due process of law, and they weren't being given fair trials. They were being lynched and set on fire, and even men of ill repute were being treated in such a manner. And Lincoln said, listen, we are a nation of law, we are a nation of order, and we need reverence for law. It needs to be, he said, our political religion, he called it. The idea of being as devoted to the law as one is devoted to the religious beliefs and affiliation. And that has been completely abrogated in our day, and it was back in those days. But this is what he was talking about, is the reverence for the Constitution and laws. Now it doesn't matter whether a president breaks his oath in defending and protecting and preserving the Constitution. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter that a governor takes an oath to defend the state constitution and then abrogates it, or it doesn't matter that somebody on a local level may have to swear an oath to the Constitution, and then they may break it. They may not even be. They're probably not even aware that they would support an idea that is unconstitutional,
right?
As opposed to them deliberately wanting to not fulfill or be obedient to the state constitution.
I'm wondering, as a polite pushback or devil's advocacy thing, how would you feel about considering how much of what's going on is just a consequence of human nature?
Well, there's that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It is indicative, and the founders were very, very well acquainted and much more well aware of human nature than we are. We've had the effects of Darwin. We've had the effects of evolution. We've had the effects of which have infiltrated progressive politics. Essentially, evolution provided the basis for all of the social sciences after the end of the 19th century and throughout the 20th century. So, in that regards, evolution, of course, would deny that there's a human nature. There's no human nature. You're just an animal, no different than a pig or any other mammal or an animal. You're no different. Whereas the founders believed in the biblical account that man was created in the image of God. So the man has been given certain aspects, certain very, very minute reflections of God, in the respect that he can understand justice. He can understand wrath. He can understand love. He can understand hate. He can understand murder. Animals can't understand any of those things. And then human beings can discuss these things. They can talk about these things. They can deliberate on this. So human nature, and because we've gotten away from the propensity of human nature, and of course, human nature has a lot to do with depravity. The founders understood the depravity, going back to what Calvin was able to extrapolate accurately from the scripture. There is none that doeth good. There is no, not one. For we all like sheep have gone astray. Everyone has gone to their own way. Or Jeremiah 17:9, for the heart is desperately wicked, so much so that who can even can understand it. I'm paraphrasing there. But that's how wicked man is. The founders had a tremendous grasp of that. We don't have that at all today.
Yeah, I think it's hitting on that concept that I see over and over again, is that the government is supposed to be resting on a bedrock of morality. As in, we shouldn't even be having to have this discussion of, well, is it just human nature, or are humans supposed to be better? It's like, no. We're supposed to rise above our base instincts.
So, Mr. Solof, you just hit John Adams. You just teed it up for John Adams, who said, quote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Now, we can debate that word religious.
Right. Because
Lincoln just talked. I just talked about Lincoln talking about a political religion, meaning the dedication to law and order, to the Constitution, just like a Christian supposedly is to have towards Christ, or to a son of Abraham, which you are to the Pentateuch, to the Torah, to the law. So, but the idea is that the Constitution, because it is a law and it needs to be followed, that it's going to be followed by someone who has more moral virtue and more conviction, more and the influences of religion in the respect of right from wrong, than a people who don't care, which encompassed many of the participants in the French Revolution who were using the guillotine and the reign of terror and the blood, and we've seen with all the other tyrannical all of the genocide and the blood that flowed in the 20th century, whereas there was no regard for law or no moral regard, no concept of do unto others as you would want them to do to you, is do whatever you want to just so you remain in power and you have authority. And this is where our society now has gone back to. It's gone back to accentuating power and authority more than the moral and religious virtue that Adams said was imperative in a constitutional republic. But let's just go over a few key takeaways, and I want to get your opinion on this, Steve.
Sure.
Key takeaways that we can get from discussing this material today. Number one, character defines public service. Number two, the Constitution relies on moral leaders. Number three, selflessness over ambition. Number four, modern politics falls way short in all three of those key takeaways. And then character shapes long-term success. The character of public officials is the foundation of effective government. The founding fathers, Jefferson, Adams, Madison, Hamilton, all emphasized the necessity of virtue, honesty, and moral courage in those who hold public office. They understood that without strong moral leaders, the very framework of the Constitution would be undermined. Today, however, many public officials seem more focused on personal ambition than on common good, diverging from the vision of the founders to restore faith in public service. Modern politicians must embrace the selflessness and integrity that were once seen as a non-negotiable trait of leadership. And I would cross out the word leadership and put in representation. Without character, no government can truly serve its people. So there you have the thoughts of Mr. Charles Jett, which I thought would provide a good basis for our conversation today. And in talking about morality, character, you have to have that in order to be obedient to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because the Constitution is the rule of law, the supreme rule of law. The state supreme rule of law is the state constitution. So, are the people we electing, are they aware of what the state constitution says?
Well, that's a good...
Are they aware of what the United States Constitution says if they're in Washington?
That's actually a good point to bring up, because I've read certain aspects of the New Jersey State Constitution, and one of it is that they are required to provide enough of an education to the citizens so that they can become productive citizens, responsible citizens. Well, if we're not teaching local civics and civics up to a point,
there you go,
where you can convince me that some of my elders even know what form of government we have, not a democracy, but a democratically elected constitutional
Democratic
republic.
Constitutional Federal Republic.
Right. If you're
And
not
incidentally,
doing
Steve,
that, then we're in violation, right?
Exactly. I don't mean to interject
Sure.
so abruptly, but I wanted to let the callers know if you'd like to call in and base your comments on the material and the topics that Stephen and I have been discussing today. We'd like to hear from you. We only have about 9 to 8 minutes left, but if you'd like to call in 856-696-0092, and if you'd like to express a sentiment based on the material that we've been discussing today, we would be happy for you to do that. So the common thread that we've been able to extrapolate from this conversation, Steve, is the fact that civic education is the lack of civic education really puts us at a disadvantage. And number one, if the candidate doesn't have a civic education, and then the voter doesn't have a civic education, and they're predicating their votes on what they're going to get out of it. What can they get out of it? That runs completely contrary to the intent of the founders in electing officials that would be selfless and have moral virtue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's inherent. And we got a caller.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, welcome to the New Jersey Constitutional Republican Radio Hour. Your name?
Yeah, well, that's not important. But the thing is,
this is Mike. I know who this is. This is Mike from Burlington.
How did you guess?
You can't fool
But anyway,
JR.
if you read about Washington, and I read a little bit about them, and through good people, didn't Washington say to the when they were appointing him as president, "What do you want me to be? A dictator, a president?" And the other one I'm going to take, but didn't he mention them to that? That the country can only go in one direction, and they didn't really know themselves.
Well, I've read quite a bit of the great George Washington, our first president, the father of our country, and I don't recollect him or recall him asking that question.
Well, wait a minute. When his time was up, he
gave a farewell address.
He actually brought that back up again.
Well,
there's a few modern presidents today.
Well,
like Ronald Reagan.
Well, yeah. Well,
thought about that too.
Well, I'm not. So, what is your point, Mike? Tell me exactly what it is.
The point is Trump, Washington was all against the federal too. He wasn't really happy with it. Like we're having a problem with it today.
What do you mean the federal? You mean the national government?
Well, the thing is, he didn't really was crazy about getting involved with people too much, and that they should do their own thing. But there is laws that they put down. But in real reality, it did not turn out the way that the founding fathers, of course, really put it out there.
Well, that's true, and that largely, in that respect, is because of the creation of political parties. They were firmly against what they called faction. They used the word faction and parties simultaneously as being equal in parallel application. But that occurred, and how did it occur? It occurred in Washington's administration, and it occurred with two personalities, one Thomas Jefferson and one Alexander Hamilton, who became Hamilton and the Federalists, which George Washington was, and then Thomas Jefferson and the Anti-Federalist. So now political parties have served, and they didn't anticipate that, but they did serve a very, very important, and they served this nation very well for really I would say up until the last, to the 21st century. So in that aspect, the founders had no idea, but they created a constitution that was malleable. It was amendable, so that regardless of the dynamics of the coming ages, it would be able to be applicated. Right. I hate to use the word adapt, but it's a good word. And the fact is that they created this constitution that was amendable so that these changes could be made, but they couldn't have foreseen the fact that the people would would move towards populism and emotion than the ordaining and establishing rule of law, the Constitution, which is what they did when they made the Constitution the law of the land. So in that respect, you're right, Mike.
Well, I'm going to go back and read that again. The other one was, I'll find it, and next time you're on, I'll see if I can get
Good.
to tell you.
Well, I appreciate your call.
The other one was the king. He goes, now, what would you rather me be? A president, a dictator, or a king? So, it was very confusing at the time. But the problem is today that a president that gets in there should be able to do his job without every time a judge pops up and tries to stop him.
Well, that's a loaded question because, well, it's not. It's an observation. I appreciate the observation, Mike. But what it is that the president has to work within the Constitution, within Article 2 of the Constitution. Now, because the blending of the branches, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, the blending has occurred. That we have these issues that come up. But the idea is that the people may want the president to do something that's unconstitutional. So we can't do that. We have to follow the Constitution first, not the whims or the prejudices of the president. We have to follow the rule of law.
Well,
and that's how the founders devised the government, to rein in presidential authority.
Well, the rule of law, and it seems like every hour is broken with anything that has to do with politics. But anyway, I listened to you. I think you're very interesting, and I was taught a lot by my parents. And the thing is, my honest opinion is that we should start as early as possible to learn about who we are.
Yes.
And that is the Constitution.
Yes, civics. We've been talking about civics with Steve. Mike, thank you for the call. We just have a couple more minutes, and I hope to talk to you next month.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks for guessing my name.
Thank you, Mike. You take care. You have a good month. Okay, Steve, we're winding down, and I'd like to get your some of your final thoughts on today's program.
Well, we went through that article, and we're talking about character and morality and ethics a lot, and whether our representatives and the people know enough about what's going on to properly hold an election, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think how it relates to my project is I'm doing the initial vetting process.
Yes.
Do candidates feel comfortable enough to correspond through email, get on a radio show or a podcast, and just make their platform known, or create their own website and on their own time just lay their thoughts out.
Now, how can the people get involved, or how can people get to your information, to your website?
So there's InformTheVoteNJ.com, which is again inform as in information, the vote, NJ as in New Jersey.com.
Very good.
And then there's the radio show that I do here on WVLT, Tuesdays 5 to 6 p.m. And
so you're going to want to listen to Steven Solof's program on Tuesday evenings
and
at 5
I'm also
o'clock.
being a little annoying by going around to the different government meetings and making my public comments so that people know the website exists. And it's on the record that all the candidates are aware that they can share their platform.
Well, Steve, you're doing a very, very important work. I hope we're going to work together. I believe we are. I'm going to be on your program in a month or so, a couple of weeks. But maintain the work, keep doing the work, and let's talk about this democratic, constitutional, federal republic.